Hello and welcome to the Game Deflators Podcast. My name is James.
Whoa. What happened? Are we in season 1 or are we in season 2? What happened here, man?
I'm here.
So Ryan's here. John's here. How the hell is James here?
Because I'm a master of time and space. You asked too many questions, sir.
I'm totally confused, but all right. So Game Deflators Podcast, what season is this? Episode?
Season 2.
Episode 9.
Just,
all right.
Just let it happen.
Just let it. All right. We'll let it happen. All right. So,
Here on the Game Deflators Podcast, every week we try to keep space and time in the right order, talk about games that we've recently picked up, games that we're currently playing, and then every week we do, well, we used to do the Crappy Game Challenge, and now we do the Inflation Deflation.
See, that's where I'm totally confused, because Season 1 was Crappy Game Challenge, Season 2 is Inflation Deflation. James is here, you're here, I'm here, I don't know what's going on.
We're going to have a little bit of blend of the both. I certainly have a Crappy Game Challenge for y'all.
Okay, that's good.
And we do have Vampire Knight from last week to talk about still.
So we can merge the two. That works. All right.
Hey, man. Already beat me to it. Jesus.
All right. Okay, so let's open up. We are going to discuss our new pickups this week. So I'll quickly go first. I don't have a lot this week. I picked up a copy of Pokemon Silver on the Game Boy Color, I guess. I've got probably 5 copies of that, so I'll flip out a quick battery and go trade it or something. Get a little flip on that so I can put it towards something else. And I also got, finally, a copy of ZOE on the PS2. Picked up the other day for $3. So not too shabby of a pickup. It's a game that I played years ago, probably when I was in middle school. Haven't actually touched it since, so at some point I'll probably pop it in, see if it's any good compared to, what I remember, and we'll go from there.
I tried that a while ago when I got the remake bundle collection. It's all right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I remember being super into it when I was a kid, and it had some troubles with it. I don't know if it was intentional to try to stop people from cheating or what, but if you use codes to restore your health because you're a young kid and you're not very good at the game, it takes away a level when you do so. So by the time you get to the end of the game and you're facing a bunch of high-level enemies and you're level 3 because you've used all your levels to restore your health, it doesn't turn out so well.
All right, so I've come to the conclusion after hearing what you said. James will likely chime in here in just a moment. This game will sit on my shelf.
I bought it mostly to play the second game, and because I have a deep love for the Game Boy Advanced game that not many people, I've never talked to anybody else that's played it really, but I've heard that the sequel was really good. And after trying to play the remake of Zone of the Enders 1, I never even got to the second one.
Gotcha. James, do you have pickups this week?
I do have pickups. I was actually going to say, I do recall back in the day that everyone got a free Zone of the Enders when they bought the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo. Completely worth it. Never bothered to play Zone of the Enders, but buying the demo was totally worth it. It was totally tits. As far as my pickups this week, I have picked up Soldom Drop, if I'm saying that correctly, on the Switch. Honestly, I picked it up because it was $6 on clearance at Walmart. So you're going to ask me if I want a $10 or less Switch game. It could be a dog turd inside the package. I would probably buy it just on sheer principle of the cartridge tax.
That sounds like Ryan. Hey, it's $1. Why not?
Yeah, it's $1. Why not?
I buy digital.
That's true.
So I don't even get the actual price of the plastic.
Okay, so you basically get the little poop emoji is what you're saying.
No. Actually, some of those games are pretty good. I still haven't played all of them, but
and they're
I've
just
got
$1.
A vast collection for a low price.
And they're just yeah, man, he's got
just
beat.
$1. He's gonna play, and he's gonna end up spending the money on the SD cards to hold all the games. The one pickup that I did get this week that was intentional and actually got delayed by a couple of months, and then funny enough, it got delayed in shipping. Is Salt and Sanctuary, the Drowned Tome Edition. I've had it on PC actually for About a year or so, and I got to play a little bit of on PC, and then I saw that it was getting a physical release with some neat bonuses like the cloth map and things like that. And I was like, you know what? I really, kind of dig this game. It's a bit of a 2D Dark Souls, and not just one of the typical, Soulsborne knockoffs. It's similar enough, but it has its own thing, and the fact that it's very strictly two dimensional with some pretty decent combat. It's one I would recommend checking out. Even if you don't want to get it on Switch, if you're a PC gamer, you can pick it up on a Steam sale that will be coming up soon for Christmas for relatively cheap. I'm sure it'll hit around $5 or less,
So
and
let me
certainly worth it. Hmm?
let me know how that plays on the Switch actually. So that game, as a matter of fact, is on my Amazon wish list. It's been on there for a
Mhm.
while now since I first saw it was coming out on Switch. So definitely let me know how that plays out. When you get a chance on the Switch itself.
I mean, I picked it up on Vita like a year
Mhm.
and a half ago.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a balls hard game. Like I had a tough time getting through, but once I found a class that I liked and started like actually getting into the mindset of, okay, this is going to be a challenging 2D slow action combat game, I had a lot of fun with it. I didn't get very far, but I mean, it was really good on Vita. I liked it for the portability,
Mhm.
but I can imagine that it's going to be even better on Switch with like a nice big screen where you can really take it all in. Because that Vita is one of my favorite systems, but that screen's just kind of small to really focus in on something where you're worried about challenge.
That is true. That's something I've noticed. Like I do enjoy my 3DS and I enjoy my Vita quite a bit, but some games are a little too small for it to be comfortably viewed. Same thing with the PSP as well. Ryan, since you're a Vita gamer, have you played Bloodstained Curse of the Moon yet?
Um, I wouldn't call myself a Vita gamer. I love the Vita, but I have not played Bloodstained yet. I am kind of waiting
Mhm.
for I don't know. I want to play it. I've seen a lot about it. I'm not a big time Castlevania guy. Like my first
Mhm.
Castlevania was Dawn of Sorrow on the
Oh.
3DS, and I had a ton of fun with that game, all the multiple endings and stuff, and the
Mhm.
guidebook that you actually had to flip over and then look at the backside of the pages to get the other half of the story. I had
Huh.
a lot of fun with that kind of stuff, but I just the old school like Castlevania 1 and 2, that NES style. I never really played any of those.
I can also confirm that Ryan is interested in other types of stains, so not blood stains.
Womp womp
Indeed.
womp.
I'm a
Easy.
big time bounty man, the quicker picker upper.
Oh man,
Nice
I
one.
really I pegged you for a
Um,
Kleenex guy personally.
well, to make it more appealing to you, that is a digital only game. Um, Oh, that reminds me. Actually, since we're talking about the Vita, this obviously pertains to the PS3 and the Vita. If you guys either didn't get the email or didn't notice, it hasn't been mentioned in the news that I've seen, but the PlayStation Plus, the free games, they are ending the support for the PS3 and the Vita. So that essentially means you'll still obviously have the games you've already downloaded free and things like that, but they won't be putting out any new free ones. It'll just be PS4 games from now on.
Yeah, I got the email. I think it ends in March of 2019, if I'm correct.
Oh, so we still have a crap load of time. Jeez.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel really bad. I've been neglecting my like it was crazy when I got my PS4 cuz I got my PS4 for Final Fantasy 15.
Hmm.
I gave up on PlayStation 3. I bought a PlayStation 3 and then I sold it for rent money. And then I didn't buy another one until GTA 5 launched and I got a killer deal on a bundle. But I waited until the slim PS4 came out because I knew there was going to be one. I waited
Hmm.
till the second gen Vita came out because I knew there was going to be one. Like I'm done buying first gen consoles and I love my Switch to death, but they're coming out with a new Switch next year and I'm really happy with the time I've spent with my Switch, but I think I've really learned my lesson. Like I'd rather wait till the console's halfway into its lifespan, buy a second gen console that's got all the bugs fixed on it and it's half the price and thinner and has any updates they did to it. Like, I'd rather wait for that than go all in on a first-gen console anymore.
You mean you didn't like being one of the millions that owned an original Xbox 360?
I had 3 Xbox 360s.
And they all counted towards Microsoft's bottom line.
Well, so the first one I red ringed, sent that in, and it red ringed like 3 months after they stopped doing like my serial number was like 3 months past the date for the cutoff for when I sent it in. And I talked to some guy on tech support, and he hooked me up and he got me in for free. So I didn't have to pay the $100 or whatever, just the shipping. So that was fine. And then I got the Star Wars Connect Edition 360, which is super dope, but I had to box it up and put it away because it was having problems. Like, after I moved, I mean, this was 2 years ago, and I had already owned it for like 3 years. It got to the point where I just wouldn't connect reliably to live services to go on fucking YouTube.
That sucks, man. Well, James, do you have any other pickups for this week that you had?
I want to say yes, but honestly, they're probably from last week or week before that. Have been really busy, so it's a little hard for me to keep track. Those two popped in my head because they literally arrived in the last day or so.
Well, I'm sure Ryan maybe had like $5 that he spent to get like 8 games, so I definitely want to hear what he has to say.
Oh yeah, I had some pickups this week. I picked up my Switch and played the copy of Enter the Gungeon that I bought before the last podcast, and I just kept picking that up all week. And then I also finally picked up Red Dead Online. Not a new game for me because I'm still trying to go through the story mode, but man, Red Dead Online it's pretty fun. I've got 5 people in my group of friends that we're all getting online and playing together, so it's a bunch of fun, especially after the rebalance they did. I don't know if you guys heard anything about that, but when Red Dead launched its online service, it kind of tiered it out in a way to test the servers, and the better the version you bought and the earlier you bought it, the more beta time you had in like the beta week to play. And I guess there was enough blowback from people talking about how expensive everything was and how much of a grind it was. Like, just as an example, most of the guns that they had in the same guns that you played with in the main campaign, but online, were $100 to almost twice the value that they are now. And they did a thing, I think it was just a few days ago or last Thursday or something. I can't remember exactly when the cutoff was, but if you had played Red Dead Online up to that point, they would give you $250 and 15 gold bars to your character to give you like a head start boost. Because before, with the way that they had balanced the game, people were making 50 cents a mission, and it would take 8 hours to grind out a gold bar, which is like their premium currency. And I mean, think about how much you need to do of that in order to buy a gun for $440. Like, and then they drop it down to $266. So it's like all the grinding that they were expecting to put in order to sell premium currency, which I haven't even looked into exactly how you can buy premium currency. I know you can earn it in game slowly over time. I assume that there's a way that they can, charge you for it, because you can pay, you can pay for something with a ton of cash or just a couple gold bars, for that accelerated boost. But it's a little bit more balanced than I was actually expecting it to be because of the level and rank restrictions. So I got my $250. I got my 15 gold bars. I ran into town to go to the store. I got shot by a 12-year-old and respawned outside of the town. And then I ran back into the town and just dove into the store because it's instanced and they can't kill you while you're actually in the shop.
So what you're saying is that you wussed out to a 12-year-old on Red Dead?
Dude, when's the last time you played with 12-year-olds online?
Back when it was a 360, I was playing Halo, and everybody was telling me they slept with my mom.
They all did, John. So they're vicious. We all know that.
Oh my god, dude.
So I spent all of the $250 on the $266 shotgun that I bought. So it's like I blew everything they gave me right out the gate, and but at least I got something for my trouble. You know, I didn't play very much before that time. I basically got on and was like, okay, I better make sure that I get on enough before they make this balance so that I get that money and stuff. So it's just really fun. It's like, it's everything that Fallout should have waited 3 more months to release Fallout 76 to be like, hey, what's the difference between Red Dead Online and Fallout 76? Well, it's a really cool world that you already built with really cool stuff in it, and what people want to do is do that with their friends. Like, Fallout 4 was serviceable and, you know, fine. Nobody needed to go to West Virginia to play with their friends. You could have released a fucking patch and made Fallout 4 like multiplayer, and people would have gone back and played Fallout 4 again. I mean, God knows how many times people have played Skyrim again. Like, they could have sold a whole new version of Fallout 4 and made more money with less development time, and people would like it better than what they did with Fallout 76. Like, it's completely... It blows my mind with all the stuff that's been going on between those two games and how much I liken them to one another as two prominent studios, one making great next level decisions in their game development, and one dropping the ball so hard that they've achieved the lowest rating in a game franchise and a studio history by releasing a buggy, unpolished, money-grubbing thing. And then, you know, attacking the fans over their own misinterpretation of a freaking bag that came as a pre-order bonus for a $200 version of the game. Like, the way they've handled it is absolutely ridiculous. And the juxtaposition of that to how well Rockstar's handled Red Dead and Red Dead Online, like, they released Red Dead and then waited like a month or more to release the online version because they were like, we made a big, beautiful single-story game that we want our people to actually play, and then we'll release online.
Well, it's because Rockstar, historically, in my mind, has always just had a better knack for releasing games and letting them live out, you know, a good longevity, so different people can go ahead and play that game over a longer lifespan. I mean, Grand Theft Auto, we're on Grand Theft Auto 5, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously Liberty City stories and all those other little sidebar things. But, I mean, think about when Grand Theft Auto 1 came out and then Grand Theft Auto 5. I mean, the difference in time between those games is much greater than Fallout 3 and Fallout 4.
And they support their games for a lot longer, too. Each game they release has a much longer lifespan. There's still events and support and content being added for Grand Theft Auto 5 Online, things like that. If you notice, for the most part, Rockstar, they don't release games nearly as rapidly as most game companies nowadays. There's usually several years between each release. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 5 came out 3-4 years ago. Something like that, quite a while ago when you think about it in terms of video games compared to Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, you know, the easy ones to pick on. but that it's still going strong as far as sales, and just that they're still like, oh yeah, we're gonna patch this and continue to fix this and add content, and while we're making this other blockbuster game, we're gonna keep this one going because people are playing it.
You
Yeah,
know,
my friends, they were playing Grand Theft Auto 5 online basically up until the point of release of Red Dead.
Mhm.
And also, for anyone who hadn't heard, Grand Theft Auto 5 is the best-selling piece of media ever made. It has outsold every film, television show, and movie. It is the most profitable piece of media humankind has ever made.
which obviously goes back into Rockstar not needing to release 10 different games in the span of 3 or 4 years.
We want Bully 2.
That's actually what I was going to bring up. That's what what we need next is Bully 2, and then we're all set. So, James, are you currently playing anything? I mean, obviously Ryan's playing Into the Gungeon and Red Dead. I don't want to go deep into playing more Pokemon on the Switch, just outside of, I guess we want to touch on
Spoilers.
it. Yeah, if we want to touch on it, I'm on the 6th gym badge, basically. Just got done with Silphco. That's about it. That's where I'm at.
I literally haven't gone in, scrolled over to the Pokemon icon, and hit the A button in 2 weeks.
So you're still
And
on
I
Mount.
feel fine.
You're still on Mount Moon.
I'm still on Mount Moon.
That's where he's at. Okay, he won't beat
Uh,
that game.
As
I
soon as
won't. I
John
won't.
started,
I gave up. This was a really good idea. Let's do a Pokemon challenge. And then I was just like, man, this is the same Pokemon, just with different stuff that I like more, but not enough to compel me to keep going.
This bastard got me to buy Pokemon on the Switch, and I was like, yeah, I'll play it with Ryan.
And he picked up my copy for me.
Yeah, right. So a week in, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's pretty good. I should have a beat in a week. Well, here we are 3 weeks later, and here's Ryan saying I'm still in Mount Moon at level 10.
I'm not in Mount Moon. My game avatar is in Mount Moon. I am clearly elsewhere.
Not playing Pokemon.
Not even thinking about it.
All right, so James, you're currently playing.
wow, yeah. As soon as y'all started talking about Pokemon, all I could see and hear in my head was Ogre from Revenge of the Nerds just yelling "Nerds." Sorry, I still have yet to actually sit down and play a Pokemon game in my entire life, other than like a few minutes of Pokemon Stadium. Obviously, it's on the to-do list, but as far
Pick
as
up
what
Pokemon Pinball for Game Boy Color. That's a good one.
I have the Pokemon trading game on Game Boy Color.
I was gonna say stay very clear of that game.
Too late. Currently, I'm getting pretty good at the art of juggling multiple games and never quite finishing. So I did actually finish the story mode of Spider-Man on PS4. Rather, the Amazing Spider-Man on PS4. Excellent, excellent game. I've started on the first part of the DLC. I believe it's called The Heist. And although the DLC so far is a little bit of the same, they are mixing things up enough to keep it interesting enough. Obviously, anyone who has a PS4 and has any inkling or desire or likeness of Spider-Man, the story is phenomenal. I cannot say anything because no spoilers. Everyone online, for the most part, has been pretty decent about not spoiling some of the stuff. Some of it's fairly predictable, but some of the stuff toward the end, I think a lot of longtime Spider-Man fans are either going to respond with "It's about fucking time" or "Holy shit, they really did that," with the ending part. In addition to that, I'm still playing occasionally Final Fantasy X HD on my PlayStation 3. I've probably been trying to finish that for months now. The other game I'm currently playing, and I'm pretty close to the end, I have a couple more paintings to go into, is Castlevania Portrait of Ruin for the DS. And that one, I have to actually say, is probably one of the second best Castlevanias I played since Castlevania 3 and Symphony of the Night. They take a lot from the Symphony of the Night formula, but they add their own uniqueness to it to keep, and a few other things to keep the tedium down, that doesn't feel too repetitive. There's been a couple other of the Symphony of the Night clones that I started playing, and maybe after 10 hours into them, I just kind of get bored because, like, wow, I've done this. I've beaten Symphony of the Night 3 or 4 times over the years, played it to death. But Portrait of Ruin is actually very good. The animations are very impressive for the enemies and their death animations, lots of little unique things. Um, the painting mechanics are pretty interesting because you have the standard castle, but instead of them pulling the whole cheesy, inverted castle thing that started with Symphony of the Night, you actually find these enchanted magical paintings throughout the castle and you go into them and they're a whole separate area. They're like another mini castle with different themes and things like that. You also have dual characters that you control, which I can't remember both their names off the top of my head, that you can switch through at any point in time. And there's puzzles littered throughout that actually require smart and clever use of both the characters. You can have both the characters follow you. They have separate inventory and equipment, things like that. So if anyone is a fan of Metroidvanias or Symphony of the Night, things like that, and they have a DS or a 3DS for that matter, I definitely recommend grabbing Castlevania Portrait of Ruin. It's been fun. I am actually going to complete it.
Very nice. Well, seeing as you're saying, if it's on a DS or 3DS, if we have that, I'm actually wondering, can it be hacked onto the PS1 Classic?
So, this week in the PS1 Classic,
Saga.
so I've recently heard some stuff, and who hasn't heard stuff? So this article I'm looking at is on Game Revolution, PlayStation Classic 60 Hertz, how to play PlayStation Classic games in 60 FPS. It was published Tuesday, December 4th. So we're a little bit late looking at this article for the podcast, but I didn't know that this was out there. I didn't see this until recently. But basically, the already perceived to be rushed and choppy release of the PlayStation Classic is even worse.
Don't forget the crappy games on the console.
Well, despite the list of what they put out there, a lot of people were real upset about the PAL 50 hertz limit on a bunch of the games that were released on the console. So it turns out that, and I'll just look this up right here, if you plug in a Corsair K75 keyboard into the console and hit the escape key, it will pull up the PCSX menu, which is the menu for the emulator that Sony is using on the system. And
Without
that will
permission.
then
Sorry, I'd add that.
and that will launch the emulator menu where you could do all the stuff that people really wish you could actually do on the console from the get. So it can do all this stuff, but unless you own a Corsair K75 or something else applicable, you cannot go in and use multiple save states, alter the scan lines, and change the games to NTSC or NTSC. Yeah, I said that right. So it's like the console can do all the stuff that people want it to do, except they won't let you for some reason. Like, it's built into it. You don't even have to hack it to do this. You just need an escape button. It's ridiculous.
So, as much crap as we give Nintendo and their limited stock on classic consoles and such, I do have to say, at least Nintendo did the classic console right. As far as their release, not the release, as far as the actual console itself, the quality of it, how it plays, all of that's fine. Sony, obviously, this is a cash grab. I mean, it's a clear indication of cash grab at that point. Like, everything you've mentioned, the clear ability to do everything you want, is just a show of laziness, cash grab, and just rushing something into the market.
Well, and the thing is, like, I'm waiting for some company out there. I was actually thinking this on my way over tonight. I was like, I've never owned a Dreamcast. I could probably count on two hands the number of times that I've ever even played a Dreamcast. If they released a Dreamcast Classic, like, everybody knows that it's going to get hacked. Like, I just saw a video the other day about piracy and anti-piracy programs, and everybody knows that games get cracked, ROMs get released. It happens. And I don't understand why these companies don't just embrace that. Like, why would you release something so bad with such a ridiculously limited amount of games? Like, you'd be way better off saying, hey, we're going to charge $120. We're going to give you 2 DualShock controllers.
Wireless.
No, even wired is fine. Even wired, no, but just follow me. We're going to $120. We're going to give you 2 DualShock controllers. We're going to release it with the best, I don't know, let's just say 50 games even. Like, that's even enough games to make that price point justifiable. Anybody would, like, I would totally buy that just for the fact that I could have a small portable thing with 2 solid controllers and I could literally play any game I wanted to. Like, I know that the idea isn't to appeal to people to be able to hack your console and load stuff on it, but that's definitely the appeal to buy the, SNES Classic. Like, once everybody got a hold of the NES Classic and they were like, we can put anything we want on this. And then everybody bought the NES Classic because they could do the same. Like, the PlayStation controller has barely changed between PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 3. So if you had the ability to put any PlayStation 1 game on there with their vast library and have 2 solid controllers, but no, we're just going to give you the old school boomerangs. You can never ever play a game with analog on it. And we're going to release it with 20 games, most of which nobody wants, half of which have the worst version we could release on it, and not even give you the option to change it, even though that exists naturally within the hardware and software.
They didn't even give us the best version of Cool Borders. I mean, come on. Hey, by the way, your point on the Dreamcast Classic, I'll have you know, Sonic officially came out and said on hardtimes.net, the article's on our Facebook, you motherfuckers had your chance to buy the first one. No Dreamcast Classic. So just point it out there.
I personally
James?
think that one, well, let me finish this part, then we'll get back to the PS1 Classic. I was actually thinking Sega wouldn't necessarily, advertise that they would do it, but I have a strong feeling that if Sega was to put out a Dreamcast Classic, I would find it a little odd if they didn't just accidentally, wink wink, leave a way to play the GD-ROM files, which are what Dreamcast discs are. They're GD-ROM, not CD-ROM, directly in the system. Because honestly, it is such an amazingly common thing. Like, I know that it was either the earlier or the later Dreamcast, you had to actually patch the ISO before you burned it to a disc to get to play, but in my experience over the years, that was so extraordinarily rare. I've never seen one where the games had to be pre-patched. You could literally just burn them to the disc and pop them in there, and they would just play.
Well, that's like its whole legacy, isn't it? Like, I was totally outside. I just remember looking at Power Stone and being like, man, that's a game I'm never going to play, but it looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But like, the legacy I know of the Dreamcast is that, yeah, it died because everybody had computers in the, early 2000s, and they just burned copies of the disc, and it destroyed their whole market.
Generally, yes. Back in those days, CD burners were actually real expensive, like $100-$200. But that was the thing. I mean, once one person had it, and a scene release group copied the game and cracked it or patched it or whatever and distributed it, you could just keep burning copies. To tell the truth, my first Dreamcast back in the day, there was a local comic book shop in town that, funny enough, you'd go in there and sitting on the counter would be kind of 2 shoe boxes full of, cardboard sleeves with Dreamcast games. They were $7 a pop. And this is, back in, the mid 2000s, a couple of years after the Dreamcast release. So you best believe I'd go down there. It's like, oh, this game looks like ass and just has a black and white printout of the cover on here, but screw it, $7, here you go. Now, granted, it wasn't $1, but still, for $7, I thought they were worth it at the time.
So, speaking of worth it, and going back to my idea of a cool like essentially like a more of like a PSX classic than an actual PS1 classic. So I think that everybody's been really, you know, watering at the mouth for an N64 classic. So if they do one,
Mhm.
what are you willing to pay for it if it were to come with 4 controllers? Because that's going to be our first console release for something that innately comes with, you know, 4 controller support without having to buy peripherals. Like, they're never going to sell peripheral attachments for a PS1 Classic so that you can play 4-player games on it. Like, that's not going to happen. So you're limited to 2 players, no analog sticks. Now we're talking 4 players on an N64. If they charge that much for a shitty PS1 Classic, are we going to start reaching into, okay, what's console territory? I mean, I bought my Vita for $250. If they sell a N64, which is like almost a 20-year-old console with 4 controllers for $200, is that retro with like some price adjustment, or is that justifiable based off of the games list that they might release for it?
Well, here's my thought on that. I highly doubt Nintendo is going to have a bundle of 4 controllers within a console. They will likely do something along the lines of an $80 price tag, maybe $100, depending on how successful or unsuccessful the PS1 is, the PS1 Classic. And then they will likely release that N64 with 2 controllers, have Mario Kart or something else, Mario Party, in the actual console, and then sell you controllers separately for like 30 or 40 bucks. That's what Nintendo would do. That they would not right off the bat sell it at 200, I don't feel. They would force you to buy those controllers.
Okay, so then $80 for the console with 2 controllers, and then $80 more for 2 extra controllers, throw in tax, round it up.
Mm-hmm.
You're at $175 for an N64, which you know already before it's even released that you can hack every game ever made for the N64 onto it. Would you pay $160 to $175 for that and the convenience of it all being in one small, cute, tiny little N64?
I can tell you right off the bat, no, because out of the corner of my eye, I'm looking at 4 N64 sitting on a shelf. So, personally, no.
Okay, so where are all the N64 games? Where's every N64 game, John? And I only see 2 controllers. So
I can assure
give
you.
me 2 more controllers in every N64 game.
So I have 32 controllers sitting out in the living room, and I have about 90 to 100 cartridges sitting in the living room that we could play right now. So that's our collection-wise. So as a collector, and have been doing this for quite a while, I would not touch a $200 N64 Classic with even a 20-foot pole. I can't speak for James, but I think he will probably share the same sentiment as me.
Yeah, I absolutely. First off, let me say this is Nintendo we're talking about, so I would be fucking floored if it came with 2 controllers, because they know damn well they could just sell them separately. Also, there is the logic of there isn't that many N64 games that utilized all 4 controllers, but unfortunately, Reggie Fils-Aimé had already officially spoken to say there was no plans for an N64 Classic, which I actually found disheartening. I had no interest in buying an NES Classic or a SNES Classic. The N64 Classic I was interested in if they used a different system on chip, board, basically Android board inside of them that was a bit more powerful, which generally they would not because cost and things like that. But I myself, no, I was actually thinking the whole time that y'all were chatting about it is like, well, you could do that, or I could spend a little bit less amount of money and just get an EverDrive 64 and an extra controller or 2, seriously. Instead of doing that, I can say that it is 100% doable. I never knew this thing existed until my buddy Jason. He owns one because he's a big Nintendo collector, so he loves grabbing odd things. There is a thing called the iQue, that's QUE player, And what it is essentially a bit of an oversized N64 controller that works more or less like a plug and play console, like kind of like the AT Games console, but it's an official licensed product that was made specifically for the Chinese Republic. That came, comes with a few games built in, and so it tells me right there they're perfectly capable of, back then more or less shrinking down or modifying the N64 guts to fit in such a small package. Whereas, granted, the all the classic consoles are essentially Android emulation, technically including the PS1 Classic or whatever the heck they're calling the damn thing, basically where they stole the guy's work. So it's totally doable, but no, I definitely would not come anywhere near a $200 price tag on that. And I think that would actually end up burning Nintendo if they, even with 4 controllers, I think that would end up burning them. I would expect if they were to try to do a Nintendo 64 Classic, they would probably spring for $125 to $150 price tag just because they can. Now, the upside to the N64 Classic is the majority of the best games on N64 are Nintendo first party games. So we might actually be lucky and get more than just 20 games. We might get 30 or 40 because so many of them can be filled up with Nintendo properties and not have, they don't have to pay out licensing royalties. But there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be pissed because there won't be Banjo Kazooie or Perfect Dark and other rare games since they got acquired by Microsoft. They may not be able to work out a deal with Microsoft to be able to license those games back, and there's messy things like that.
Yeah, I got you, man.
I mean, we had
he's counting up the SNES Classic. How many games? Would it come with 30 on that?
Let me see here.
Dude, I haven't even honestly opened my SNES Classic. It's sat on my shelf for the longest time so far.
You're a shelf collector.
Why, you? I've got the games in hard copy form. Why would I need to play with digital one right now?
Well, now you're just a hoarder.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably borderline hoarding. So yeah, while he's counting that, let's go ahead and move into our inflation deflation title for this week. So obviously you didn't get
21
a chance.
including the unreleased Star Fox 2.
So 21 total. That's not too bad. So inflation deflation this week, Ryan and I moments ago before recording played probably 30-40 minutes of Vampire Knight on the PlayStation 2. It's a don't you dare put that up your shirt. It's basically a gun con style game. So if you play Time Crisis or House of the Dead or any of those titles, Vampire Knight is essentially the exact same thing as that. And so right now we don't have a gun con on us. I think they go for about $20 a pop. So it might be worth getting it just to replay that game because it was actually a lot of fun. But Ryan, I'll let you kind of get into the overall specs of the game, when it was released and all that. But as far as everybody listening is concerned, definitely enjoyed Vampire Knight quite a lot while playing it. We didn't have the gun con, so we played on a DualShock controller for each of us.
Okay, so Vampire Knight by Namco released January 1st, year 2000, Y2K, for arcade, and then subsequently November 16th, 2001 for PlayStation 2. So, they fixed all those Y2K bugs and then ported it over to the PlayStation. It's a rail shooter by Namco. It's let's see, it was released by Sega's WoW Entertainment, and WoW Entertainment is responsible for a whole bunch of stuff: House of the Dead 3, some Lupin games, Sega Tetris. So they definitely have some chops in Skies of Arcadia Legends for GameCube. They've got some stuff under their belt, but it is so much like House of the Dead, down to the voiceovers and the over-the-top weirdness and odd stiltedness of these characters being in a weird first-person horror shooter game. It's very reminiscent of all that. If you haven't played House of the Dead, I don't know who you are, but if you know exactly what we played basically.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I definitely enjoy those types of games. Every time I go to an arcade, that's exactly what I go to, is a Time Crisis or House of the Dead. This was actually a lot of fun, and I really wish we had a gun con right now to play that game. Definitely feel like we missed out on a lot. And I mean, considering how far we got on just DualShocks, absolutely shocked me. Now, granted, we were playing on easy mode because there's no way we were going to get that far in that title playing on normal or above with a DualShock.
Without even testing too much, we automatically assumed that we needed to crank the sensitivity up to max in order to be able to flip around the screen. I wish I had my sensitivity down lower, because later on we found out there's like an accelerate button so that you could speed up, and I really wish that I had some more finesse. But I kept saying, like, I really think that I had a lot of fun even on the DualShock, like without the gun con, the way that it's meant to really be played. I had a bunch of fun doing that, and if we were to go back and play it again and finesse the settings to actually get them to a better play state, I think that we could have done much better and, you know, had a blast. Like, this is definitely a game that I could see actually playing for fun, unlike some of the games that we've done on the inflation deflation before, where it's like, let's test the merit and see if this is worth the price or not. I mean, 1.5 missions into the game, I was ready to say that this game is deflated, man. I think this game is worth the price of admission, which, as of today on price charting, $439 for a loose copy, $648 complete, $1672 new. I would say go on somewhere, buy it for that $439 market price, or, you know what, splurge and get a box with it and the manual, and then shoot yourself over to eBay and buy yourself a used GunCon 2 light controller for $17. I totally say I would pay $25 to play this game. Well, you know, I guess if you're getting into 2 GunCons, now we're getting pricey.
Well, think of it this way, man. Yeah, I mean, $42, maybe 50, you get 2 GunCons in the title itself. But if you look at it from a standpoint of, if you
$60, 2 GunCons, a loose copy of the game, and a 6-pack, and you're gonna have yourself a fun time.
Exactly.
Well said.
But dude, imagine if we went to a movie theater and this game was sitting in an arcade and we were popping quarters in there to keep going, or I guess nowadays it's, you know, the card that you charge up and whatnot. How much would you have to pay to play that game and beat it all the way through? By the time you're done with your charge card and then multiple times coming back to the movie theater to play, you could have a GunCon set up in your house. And I mean, that would just be fantastic to play on GunCon. We're going to have to pick some up to play this game and beat it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like, I guess we could put a disclaimer on this one that it's a little bit reliant on the accessories. But I mean, I had fun with the controller, so we'll put, you know, an asterisk next to that. And I think it's definitely a fun game for $4, you know, loose and change. Like, it's definitely a pickup for me. This is a game that I would buy and I would play, but John already owns it, so I don't have to.
Exactly. And then I guess we can get more into like the technical aspects of it. So the graphics, I felt, for a PS2 game were actually very good, especially that type of game. Those rail type shooters for arcades, they don't really age poorly. They
and that's the thing. I mean, it was built for an arcade.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it was good enough for arcade and they ported it over, I mean, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, they don't age poorly, so I think we're good on that. So the graphics are great. I thought the voice acting was right on par with any arcade rail shooter I've played, so that's a plus for me.
Yeah, and it has that serviceable, you know, quality of camp to it, just like the House of the Dead. I mean, it doesn't have that what is it? Where's G moment or whatever that's so famous from House of the Dead, and now I'm an idiot for not knowing it before saying it, but, you know, it's got that same kind of quality to it. I mean, in the opening to the game, you're treated to their Dracula stand-in, and then you get to scroll across his like chamber and see the 6 bosses that you're gonna fight, and all of them throw in their opinions to it. It's like, oh my god, we are in for some weird vampire old school arcade voiceover stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, I actually truly enjoyed it. I think this is the first PS2 game that we've done for an inflation deflation, actually, and probably the best game we've done so far. Out of, I would think.
So James, you haven't been in these inflation deflation, but going to what John said there, is there, because I'm not a collector, I know you guys are collectors, is there kind of a break point between how retro you get and the price point? Like, we've looked at some games for, you know, SNES that really, I mean, they're not that expensive, but they're more expensive than I'm willing to play for. But just the sheer, you know, amount of game you can get out of a PS2 game just inherently seems worth more at a mediocre price point.
Okay, I get what you're asking. All right, so essentially for us as collectors, we don't always, and I would say we probably rarely consider the actual playability of a lot of the games we pick up. Um, that's not necessarily that we don't pick up games that we actually really want to play, and we do, of course, pick up games that we'll probably never play. We call it shelf dressing. That's the term we coined for it, shelf dressing. Because either it was very inexpensive, or sometimes there's just that bit of an itch. You're like, oh, I have, you know, the first 2 Double Dragons, and I know Double Dragon 3 is god awful, but I got that itch to complete them. Um, John and I, for the most part, were both cheap bastards when it comes to collecting. One, because John's a cheap bastard in a good way. He's a good cheap bastard, folks.
I can confirm this.
Yes, indeed. I'm a cheap bastard because, one, I'm just not a big fan of pissing away money, but also because I started collecting a long time ago, like 10 years or so ago. So when I was collecting, I was a guy who was annoying the piss out of like the original Nintendo Age collector guys, going on Goodwill auction and things like that. But I got accustomed to just like, oh, I'll just casually stroll through thrift stores or the flea market and pick up games for $1, $2, or $5, um, and things like that. And over time, you know, is when they started moving up. Initially, you know, especially at flea markets, some of the smarter sellers will start noticing a little bit of a demand, but for the most part, it was still like, you know, hey, you know, how much do you want for this copy of Bubble Bobble? It's like, $5. Cool. You know, back when it was like an $18 game. I don't know what it is now because I don't bother keeping track for the most part. But as far as, do I think a game with more playability is worth paying more for? Honestly, that's completely subjective to the person. I myself, like the Amazing Spider-Man PS4, I would say to most people, yes, it can be a fairly short game, which I'm actually pretty okay with. But the amount of content, the entertainment value you get out of it at $60, totally worth it. That wouldn't stop me from saying like, you know, just wait till Christmas, it'll hit $40 or possibly even 30 by it then. But specifically with the retro games, some of them do have a high amount of replayability, and would I say it scales well with what they cost? Not really. So, for example, North and South on NES, um, I'm not sure what it goes for now. It used to be it's a fairly uncommon NES game and probably hit around $40. It's probably like $30 or 25 now, but the game itself is actually a lot of fun, especially in the 2-player versus mode. It's
$31.92 currently on NES.
Okay, so I'm not too far off, and that's actually come down a little bit, I think. Would I say that's worth $30? Not really. It is fun, but it's more like an afternoon of fun. There's not a whole ton of replayability. Some games, of course, do. For instance, you know, let's say the original Super, or not Super, but just Street Fighter 2 Turbo Edition on Super Nintendo. You know, for $10, $15, Probably, especially replaying with with your buddies. Games like Tekken 3 on the PS1, has a ton of replayability. It's just that's one of those games that's just fun to play with a friend. Um, some games stack up well in a single player mode. The original Legend of Zelda, if you dig Zelda, or even A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, things like that, to me are, or even Super Mario World, totally worth 20-25 bucks because I've been playing them since I was a kid, and I still enjoy it when I play it. I don't, start playing and go, "Oh God, I've done this before so much." No, I still sit down and it's like, "Oh man, this is great." And it's not just nostalgia feel. It's actually games like that for me. The reason I still enjoy them is because they make it easy to slip into the zone where you're kind of just zoomed in on what you're doing and what you're playing, and everything else is disappearing. It's the escapism that gives it value for me. What do you think, John?
I'd agree with you, man, but I would also say that a big reason for this difference in price point. Why are you handing this to me? What's
So I'm handing John his still in-box copy of the Super Nintendo Classic, which has just about every game: Street Fighter,
Mhm.
Super Mario World, Zelda, Super Metroid. All of those are all included in that for a nice, fully packaged, contained $80 price tag.
Oh, so
mine
you're
is
asking
in
in
new
context of
mint.
the classic systems like that? Then yes, for someone who obviously isn't a collector, because that's who those were geared toward. They were geared toward the nostalgia seeking market. But even someone not buying them for nostalgia, I would say for $80, yes, you'll totally get your plenty value of entertainment out of it should you use it. Just the same as this $8 or $10 novel I'll pick up and buy. You know, we'll say roughly 10-12 hours of actual time spent reading it, if even that, spread out across that, will totally feel like it's worth the value to me. Um, but I think so.
And just get back to your question towards me as far as agreeing overall, I would say I do agree with every point you made. However, one thing to point out is I think a big difference in the prices and why we see something like a PS2 game. Because, I mean, honestly, the highest priced PS2 game outside of like if you went in like some crazy special edition or whatever is like 230 bucks complete in box, which I think is Kuon or Rule of Rose. Those two are like the top most expensive titles. And overall, I mean, if you kind of look at from a generation standpoint, the N64 kind of was at its cusp just a couple years ago. I think PS1 out the classic, we're going to start seeing those prices go up even higher, and then PS2. I mean, it's always based on the generation, that nostalgia effect, and we're kind of, I feel, past the nostalgia effect on NES and SNES. The classics have obviously had a lot to do with those prices dropping, I feel. Now, there's a lot of games out there that are obviously rare or uncommon that are never truly going to drop to like $2. But I mean, you can right now pick up a copy of, Donkey Kong Country 2 is like $13 on eBay. I can tell you 4 or 5 years ago, that game was going for like 30 online. So there's obviously been a significant shift in the price of games on those consoles. So I think what you're seeing on the NES and SNES titles, that's kind of their point. That's a correction in the gaming, like retro gaming market. I feel like that's where they're going to stay for a while, is where they're at now.
Well, and there's got to be some level. I'm looking up here. I pulled up a uh, wiki on best-selling game consoles. So the PlayStation 2 is the best-selling game console according to this at uh just over 155 million, while the Super Nintendo sits down at a 49.10 million. So it's like, with the vast superior number of consoles sold, a lot of games like Vampire Knight, they're just going to print more copies because there's more people out there to play it. Like,
Not necessarily a
there's
game.
over 3 times as many PlayStation 2s in the world as there are Super Nintendos. Like,
But
I
that's not
mean,
necessarily true. So a game like Rule of Rose, I want to say, had a print set of somewhere in the 20,000 range globally. So like that's a game that if you think about 150 million consoles sold, and I want to say it's more PS2s than 150 million, but if you look at that many
Yeah, it's
consoles,
over 155 million.
yeah, so 155 million, and a game like Rule of Rose, I want to say is 20,000 copies worldwide. So 20,000 to 155 million. If you really consider like the rarity from that game from a percentage standpoint, that's ridiculous how rare that title is for that console. And then you look at something like Earthbound on the Super Nintendo. I think Earthbound was 175,000 units sold at its point in time. So I mean, yeah, these games, there was more consoles released, but a lot of these games truly are uncommon because they just didn't think to print a whole bunch. If they weren't selling well, why are you going to print more and waste resources? So that's really when you look at it from that perspective, there are a lot of titles that really like literally are rare or uncommon. Whether or not they're good is a different case, but there are titles out there that from a rarity standpoint do hold that status of rare. So without digging too deep into that, overall, like I said, man, earlier, I enjoyed Vampire Knight. You enjoyed Vampire Knight.
I definitely did.
James would definitely enjoy Vampire Knight. Hopefully he watches a Let's Play. I think we're getting to end here. Wow, this is the longest recording we've done in quite some time. So that's because James is on. So basically, I think we need to decide our inflation deflation for next week, unless somebody has a say in what we're doing next week. Hinting to James. Okay.
Shh.
James.
Shh. Do you hear that?
What's that?
That's a sound of pain. About
Yes,
the
it
phone.
is. I have something for you, John and Ryan. I have something from your past that you thought you got away from.
Oh God, it's probably the last crappy game challenge I was supposed to do.
Oh, no. I took the time to peruse through your collection, and to be quite honest, at a certain point, I was ready to call bullshit on some of the PS1 games I saw in your collection, except that there's definitely cover art to prove that these games were actually a thing. But as I was going through, one in particular caught my attention that I had to watch at least a little bit of it on YouTube. I didn't make it to the 5-second mark before I knew it was the one.
Oh God. What is it? Please just lay
John,
it on us.
Ryan, your crappy game challenge is to play 30 minutes of Miss Spider's Tea Party on the PS1.
No, I knew it. I knew it was that or Blue's Clues.
Oh, Blue's Clues was too obvious, but this is please do a Let's Play of it, or at least record your commentary, because this game is this is something interesting for those listening and are curious, who I assume can't Google on their own.
Oh no, I found it.
Imagine.
God.
I remember seeing this book at the Scholastic Book
Yes,
Fair.
there we go. Thank you, Ryan. Very good. Perfect. Yes, just imagine one of those early to mid 90s kids edutainment style horribly animated games.
What's it going for? Please, we have to mix this with inflation deflation. What is a going rate? Ryan, you need to look this up quickly while I peruse through it. I'll have you know, apparently this game was purchased in 2013. That's a Goodwill sticker for $2.59. I likely talked them down though. Oh my God. The Crickets band game. The Crickets need to form a band. Can you match each musical sound with its instrument? Oh God. The Beatles Rivercross game? That kind of looks like Frogger. That might be fun. The bee flower matching game. The bees have to pollinate flowers. Each bee has a flower in mind. Can you find and choose ones they're thinking of? Dude, I hate you. Hey, it's one player, but we could take turns, Ryan.
All right. It is 325 loose. 677 new.
Hey,
so
look at that.
The only thing we need to determine is it
worth the initial
is Vampire Knight worth 70 to 80 cents more than Miss Spider's Tea Party?
Here's the best part about it, you guys. I paid $2.59. That means this game has inflated over the last 5 years to that price point.
This game has appreciated in value. And just think, gents, one day when we actually have more than a handful of listeners, we'll be able to artificially inflate the value of this game.
Hey, I'll have you know we doubled our subscribers since last week.
Thanks to Ryan.
Dude, I actually took the time to buff this game at my old work. It's perfect condition. I can't even get out of this to say it's scratch. We can't play it. It is.
It is
perfect.
fate. Absolutely.
Oh God. Hey, if you open it up, it's actually got Miss Spider with her tea party. Interesting. I will say this is a quite colorful game, and Miss Spider's Tea Party invites children 3 to. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan, you can't play. Only 3 to 7. I'm really sorry. To enter David Kirk's world
that's
of
just a
color
battle
and
you have
wonder.
to fight on your own.
8 games provide hours of fun. I don't think that's true. With a healthy serving.
Hours literally just means more than 1 hour.
Oh, here's where Ryan can get tied in. With a healthy serving of age-appropriate basic skills practice. This will be appropriate. Okay, yeah. Lots of beautiful 3D images and animation. Do I have to play this on the 55-inch in a 4K quality on the PS3?
That's a good question. Yes.
Or can we play it on...
Oh, no. I want First, I would like you to play it on the CRT so you can see how god-awful those graphics are and the way that they're meant to be represented. Then I would like you to take that 380i or maybe 240p god-awful, jagged, pixelated claymation wannabe graphics and stretch them across your lovely 4K resolution 55-inch TV. Oh, yes. Yes, indeed.
Hey, you know what? Reading this, at least it has analog control compatibility.
Oh, shit. Well, we can't play
Next
it on
time
the
the
PS
time-space continuum breaks and James shows up, I'm leaving you on your
You
own.
definitely should, Ryan,
Yeah,
because I found the next opportunity that I get to give him a crappy game challenge, I found the next one, and I'm going to make a point to have this tattooed on my hand, so I will not forget this time.
You know, whenever you move into our city, and we can do this in person, so anybody listening, James is remote currently, you will have to join us on these crappy game challenges. So
Remote from the past.
That's right.
From the past, that is correct.
We could just hang the controller
Yeah,
out the
so,
door or something.
Oh God, it's gonna be terrible. All right, well, I think that concludes our episode this week. That's a downer. What a way to screw up the week.
Oh, that's such music to my ears. Oh, yes.
Oh,
Your tears are so
God,
sweet,
it's gonna be
John.
brutal. All right, I guess we're playing this next Wednesday.
Sounds good.
Actually, we might want to play this weekend just to get it out of our system. We'll figure it out.
So this has been the Game Deflators Podcast. I'm Ryan.
And I'm John.
And I am James from the past. Maybe. Perhaps from the future.
I'm
Me too.
confused. All right, well, this has been all 3 of us, and we
The
are
Game Deflators.
the Game
the Game
Deflator.
Deflators.
Hold on, we got to sync that. 1, 2, 3.
Deflators.
The
Game
Game Deflators.
Deflators.
All right. Well, he's in the past,
That's right.
so it's fine.
One comes after.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.